In the interests of authenticity, I've come up to what I think was the old common, where I think the fair land probably was in medieval times and probably into Victorian times. Usually the fairs were quite continuous. I haven't been able to find out very much about the one that was held in the village here, but I'm looking all the time and I found out a lot about medieval fairs, which I'll talk about probably up on the heath actually. We'll talk about that. But I thought we'd come along the footpath here just through the little bit of woodland, and I have been told this is the last remnant of the old common. So it's probably the place, but it's not quite as interesting or romantic somehow as the heath itself. So we will go there as well. But, oh, that's a bit odd. It's a piece of old china, but it's really old and it's quite big. I don't think that's something that would just get turned up, but perhaps it is. Perhaps the rabbits have turned it up. I'm going to probably take that back with me. That's what anybody wants it, and it looks really old. So I'll just leave that there while we go up onto the common. And well, I think it's the common. I'm making it up really, but I think this it probably is the flat piece of ground that was the fair land. And then I will probably pick it up on the way back. So as I say, this isn't the most exciting looking thing on the video because it is just a piece of grass. We've actually got houses around it now, although this is a really old and big tree here on the edge that, I don't know how old that would be. There's a beech tree there, I think. Yes, it is a beech tree, and an oak tree next to it. They both look old, so I should imagine they've been there for a good 100 years or so anyway, probably more. And this is the ground. You can see it's a beech tree, you can see some of these beech masts clinging on still, and the moles have been busy. And one of the reasons I'm pretty sure that this is the old common is the fact there's this footpath, as you can see where the feet have tramped it down across the middle, and that looks like a fairly established footpath to me. It's not something you would make now. So here we are. I don't know if you can imagine, and it isn't as easy to imagine, the days when it was a fair ground once a year on Lady Day, 25th of March, which would have been a day well marked by the church. And in fact, I'll talk a little bit about it as we head back actually, because I was doing a bit of research about medieval fairs and onwards, and they tended to they started off being held in churchyards because the church has a lot of control over them, and they also benefited from them financially. And after a while they decided that things that used to go on at these fairs were not particularly seemly to be connected with the church, so they still wanted the money that they could make, but the actual fair got moved to a piece of land in the village, somewhere in the village, if they had a village green or a common. In this case, just going to pick up this bit of china. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but it's just too lovely. Look at this, so old, and too lovely to leave here and let it just go to rack and ruin or get buried again. So I shall take that with me. Anyway, yes, so I was saying that the fairs got moved to pieces of common land, and this is where I imagine the gypsies who made their encampment would have made their encampment, and also they would have been some of the fairgrounds people later on. In medieval times, they were primarily, I've been reading this, places of trade, and they would have stalls, much really I suppose as you would imagine now when you have a fete or a fair. There would be stalls and traders, and the entertainment that would take place was a kind of form of advertisement for the different traders, because they would have their stalls, they would be selling things you wouldn't normally be able to get hold of in the village where people didn't travel very far. things like spices and different kinds of cheese, because the traders would come from all over the country. It was quite something, a fair. Something to look forward to all year when you didn't have to go to work, and the peasants could mix with the lords of the manor and the grander folk, and although they'd be looking for different things, the aristocracy would be very excited by all the new fashions that they could procure, and the costly foods and spices and furs, even all sorts of things that the traders would have. And the entertainment that would take place, we think of things like medieval jesters and jugglers and dancing bears, but the entertainment started off as a form of advertisement. It's a bit like the adverts we get now on YouTube or something. The actual entertainment was a way of attracting people to each of the stalls, and so the stall holders would actually engage the entertainers, the jesters and jugglers, acrobats, to come and perform just by their own stall, so that it would attract people nearby, and then they would get accustomed. So that's you can imagine that human nature doesn't change. Whether there were actually dancing bears up on the grass there that we've just been to, I don't know. Obviously they were not particularly well looked after necessarily, the dancing bears, not something we would condone now, but it's quite a thought, isn't it? So we'll move on anyway from here. So as you can see, it's still very wet underfoot. I shall make my way through and back out and up onto the heath, so I shall come back to you then. It's Sunday morning. I'm back up on the heath. I just popped back up here. It's beautiful, as you can see. The sky's blue. It's a lovely Sunday morning. I did say yesterday that I would come back up over here on this side of the lane and talk a little bit more about the fair and things I've been discovering, but I didn't do that in the end. Well, I did come back up here. I just took a few photographs of the new candle pots that I collected yesterday. I was so excited about how they've come out. I don't want to talk too much about them yet because that's another video really, but I just thought I would probably pop a few images of them on at the end of this video just to show you, just get a little preview of them, because I was just so exceeded what I was hoping even, which is quite something. So anyway, I thought I would just pop up here and just explain that, and say I'm going to go back up now to the cottage and I'm going to do a bit of gardening, and I wanted to show you just how the spring garden is coming on, how it's looking now. Not that it does need a lot of tidying, and I've still even got some more planting to do, but still it's lovely to see those signs of spring, and I thought it would be nice to look at the hellebores as well, because they've got some of those in the front, some of those in the back, and they've just come up by themselves really, and they're just some of my favourites. So we'll go back and have a look at those, and I think that'll probably do for this week, and we'll come back next week and we'll talk more about the fair, and also about the heath, and about the pots and my ideas, and I hope you'll be interested to join me with that. Well, I've really been finding things, what with the china that I found, And now I'm just on the other side of the road. I was just photographing these beautiful snowdrops and looked down and there were bits of glass, and I've sort of been poking around. I'm going to come back and poke a bit further, but I think it's an old bottle dump or that old dump of some kind. And I've just found this beautiful little bottle, and there's another one here which is complete here, which has got some writing on, which I should look at later. I might have it upside down. But anyway, I'm just going to take those back with me and clean them up. And they're probably Victorian. I should think they might even be Victorian. So it's interesting that I've been looking at interaction of people in the landscape, not just the landscape itself. And this is obviously some really clear evidence of human activity. And there's lots more bits of bottle. I can see broken bits poking up, but I'm going to come back and see if I can find any more treasures within this lot. When I was a little girl, in our garden there was in fact an old Edwardian dump, because I started trying to dig a pond out, which was my ambition in life, was to have a pond, and I spent ages digging and digging to try and make a pond. I don't think it was ever lined and had water in, but it was a lovely project, and rather than finishing it ever, I was always just finding more and more things. I found old bottles like this and old stoneware jars and even an really old pair of steel-rimmed spectacles. And it was just like a beautiful place to find treasure. Maybe that's where I started having an interest in archaeology, I don't know, because it was digging these things out, and I made a little museum upstairs in our house. We had a spare room which I used to use as a playroom and put things up there and labelled them and stuff. So yeah, anyway, I'm just going to take those two bottles back. So I'll pick them up now, a bit dirty, but I'm giving them a wash. And I shall come back another time and see what else is here. I can see it's tantalising little hints of other things, but there's lots of broken glass, so I think I should come back with gloves on. I hear a chaffinch in the background. It's lovely. I haven't seen many chaffinches this year, so it's lovely to hear one. These are the front garden hellebores, and they all were here already in the garden. Everything else has been moved around and changed, but they were here already and they're still here. And it's really hard to make them look anything when you just photograph them, but you just need to lift up their heads and see their beautiful colours inside. I particularly like ones that have got the green inside. So that's one, and this one seems to be a different one because it's wow, look at that inside. Beautiful, isn't it? White with a kind of veined darker pink and green inside. And then the third one at the back here is this one, which is a lovely pink one with just a bit of green just inside, like stripes inside the petals, which is gorgeous as well. So I've just tied it up round them, and I cut off the old leaves because they usually get very scruffy looking leaves very quickly, and you can cut them off without hurting the plant, and then you can obviously see the flowers better as well. I've just put some wood chip round them. I haven't finished the front garden, but I've wanted to, because they're so lovely, I wanted to make sure that the hellebores had got the best chance, and I've given them a bit of horse manure as well. So that's them, and I'll just pop round to the back and show you the ones that are growing in the back garden. Well, I said I'd show you the back of the garden. There's a few more hellebores, and this little tiny one here, very dark coloured one, but very gorgeous. I love that kind of bruised purpley colour, and hopefully it will grow and get bigger for next year. I think it must have seeded itself there. And then somehow, I don't know how they do actually, it's very mysterious. And then here is a beautiful double one. I think it might be the only double one. And that is a lovely, I don't know the name of any of them, I guess they're all hybridised. But I've actually bought this one as a little plant outside a shop in a local town, just I think last year would have been, but it looks really happy, doesn't it? I had to go into the shop and buy it, even though it wasn't actually a plant shop or anything. They just had a few plants outside, but yeah, I kept thinking about it, and I went home and I went back the next day and bought one. So I'm really glad I did. And this is the other one I was going to show you, which has got flowers on, and this is a green one. I don't know the name of it. Again, it's a different one though. It's not one of those hybrid ones. It's got very sharply serrated, divided leaves like this, and these really lovely cupped green flowers. I'm just a real sucker for green flowers and hellebores, so the two together, really irresistible. That's it. I think that's all the hellebores which have got flowers on. I've got a few more that haven't got flowers on. I don't know whether they will have, or whether they're maybe waiting for next year when the garden's a bit less being moved around all the time. But yeah, I'm really pleased to have them. They're very cheering and spring-like in the garden,